Hi everyone. In this vlog, I'd like to explain why training load is important for all members of the coaching and performance team. Whether you're an athletic trainer or physical therapist, whether you're a strength and conditioning coach, whether you're a sports coach, or whether you're the athlete themselves. The paper I'm discussing today is entitled If Overuse Injury is a Training Load Error, Should Undertraining be Viewed the Same Way? And it's from a paper that involved a lot of collaborators from all over the world involved in elite sport and was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. And it basically revolved around the concept or the question of who owns training load. Is it the sports medicine department or is it the performance team? Do coaches play a role in owning training load? And what role do athletes play in ownership? Now, from this paper, I produced a very simple schematic that describes the different type of training activities that occur right throughout a training year, from off-season break, rehab, practices, right through to match play and the most demanding passages of play. And what I've done is broken this figure down into high-speed running that occurs in any sport, but this was for football. And you can see that the high-speed running demands change throughout different activities. And I've drawn a red line through the graph to represent the average demands of match play, of competition. Now, if we focus on the off-season period, the off-season break for a moment, most athletes will tell you that that's party time, that's their time, and there's not a lot of high-speed running that occurs during that period. We can send our athletes away with training programs, but they're under no obligation to complete those programs. So it's a little bit of a black hole. We don't actually know what our athletes are doing in that period. But if they break down on day one of pre-season, typically the finger gets pointed at the strength coach. They train them too hard. Or at the sports medicine team, they didn't screen them well enough. Or even the coach, they kept them out in practice for way too long and practiced too many reps. No one actually says to the athlete, what did you do in your off season to prepare you for pre-season training? So you can see here that the athlete plays a role in owning their load tolerance. Now, if we move along the continuum, we can look at something like practice activities, the practice or skills that our coaches perform on a day-to-day basis with our athletes. Now, in a coach's mind, they're trying to get the reps into their athletes. But it's also important to keep in mind how well these reps or these practice sessions replicate the demands of competition. And you can see, at least for some practice activities, the demands of these practices are well below the average demands of competition. So in some ways, the coaching staff own load. They are involved in preparing the athletes for competition. So it's important that the practices that they put together actually replicate and in some cases stimulate the demands of competition so that we can get adaptation in our athletes. Okay, so that's two players in the mix. We have the athlete and the coaching staff that can play a role in owning load or understanding load. Let's talk about it from a sports medicine perspective. If we have an athlete with a hamstring strain injury, they obviously can't perform high-speed running while they're performing rehab tasks. It's important that we give that athlete their tissue time for biological healing. We can't cheat biological healing time. But even though our sports medicine staff have one eye on rehabilitating that soft tissue injury, they also need to be thinking, what am I getting this athlete back for? What does this athlete need to do when he leaves rehab and goes back to training and goes back to competition? Because the demands of rehab, in terms of high-speed running demands, are a long way away from the average demands of competition. And if they're a long way away from the average demands of competition, they're a mile away from the most demanding passage of play, the worst case scenario. Now, this is important because when the athlete leaves rehab, typically they're handed over to the strength and conditioning staff. Now, the strength and conditioning staff are thinking, what is the most demanding passage of play? What does this athlete need to do as part of their role? And they're thinking, what is this worst case scenario? They're trying to expose the athlete to these most demanding passages of play to ensure that they're able to perform those activities when it matters in competition. Now, if you're a strength and conditioning coach, no one doubts your ability to come up with physically tough drills, but you need to be smart enough to look back at where that athlete has come from. And if that athlete has come from the basement, then there's no way that they're going to be prepared for what you're going to throw at them at the ceiling. It's important that you do expose them to those demands, but you may have to do it in steps. So in your best programs, your sports medicine team are looking forward and your strength and conditioning team are looking back. You have a joined up approach. So you can see in this example that the sports medicine team and the strength and conditioning staff have a role in keeping an athlete injury-free, but also helping that athlete perform at the highest level. Equally, the sports coaches have an impact on training load. What you do in practice has an overall effect on training load. And finally, the athlete plays a role in their performance. It's their career, it's their athletic career, so it's important that they do their loading in their off-season program to give themselves the best chance of staying injury-free and tolerating the demands of pre-season. Thanks for listening. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below or visit our website at gabbittperformance.com to see some of the services we can offer you and your team.